Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about constipation, which I know is a super fun conversation to have, and we're all talking about it all the time with our friends and family. Of course not, but that becomes some of the problem with these symptoms is that they're a little uncomfortable to talk about, and so the only experience we have is our own experience, and then we treat that as normal. But if we don't have anything to compare to, we don't know whether that's normal or not. So hypothyroidism can really play a big role in contributing to things like constipation. And today we're going to go over things like the food that we're eating, how our microbiome can respond, and how our enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system that controls our gut function, can all play a role in this, and how we can troubleshoot each one of these areas. And you guys may have noticed, but before we get started, I wanted to just cover something real quickly. New spot. My last spot I was recording in, I was getting beaten over the head with some sunshine, and this will be a little bit more consistent for us. But the other thing that I want to do is I want to make these videos a little bit more conversational. So usually they're very succinct, they're very to the point, which has always been my goal. I want to make sure that I'm delivering information for you guys in a way that is easily accessible. And my concern has always been that I'll get distracted, I'll get down these side paths that aren't really helpful for us. But I think there's a healthy balance for us to strike. So I'm just going to be doing things a little bit differently, maybe editing a little bit differently. So you guys may or may not notice, but if we don't like it, we'll go back to the old way. And but hopefully you guys do like it. And of course, the main point of this channel is always to help you guys have natural strategies, things you can use in your own home that goes beyond just the typical recommendations for thyroid conditions, which is medication. So if you like that kind of thing, hang around. I think there's a lot of great value for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also ring the bell. I'm here every single Thursday, and so if you're interested in this stuff, that'll make sure that you know when new content goes live. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Dr. Bodle. I specialize in helping women with Hashimoto's and low thyroid to lose weight and improve their energy. And the reason for that is because those are the two most common symptoms that I see. But gut problems are a huge issue as well. And whether it's constipation, bloating, reflux, diarrhea, all of these things can come from problems with our thyroid, and we have to be able to work our way back and really understand, what is causing that dysfunction in the first place and how can we support it. So the first area that we want to focus on in regards to supporting our thyroid and also improving our constipation is what I call food fit. Does that food fit with your body? So we've talked before about how I don't necessarily like labeling foods healthy or unhealthy. It's better to think about it in terms of, does that food work well with your body and your physiology? Because there is going to be differences and nuances from person to person. So if we eat a food that can irritate or disrupt the way our digestive tract works, then there's an increased likelihood that that can also disrupt the way our thyroid gland works. And as we know, our thyroid helps to set the metabolism and drive the activity of all different parts of our body. And so if we disrupt that process, it's going to potentially lead to a decrease in thyroid hormone production or a decrease in thyroid hormone utilization. Either way, this can cause things to slow down, and of course, this can then greatly impact the way our digestion works. So it's a little bit of a vicious loop where foods that irritate our digestion can then cause problems for our thyroid, which then comes back and further disrupts digestive patterns. So some of the things that I think we need to look at are some of those more common or potentially more inflammatory foods. And for thyroid issues, I always think we need to take a long look at things like gluten and dairy. Now, of course, there could be other foods that are problematic, and those foods might not be problematic for you, but they should at least be assessed. When I make recommendations to people in terms of their food selection, I always give it to them in terms of a progression. Now, of course, in my office, I'm going to be a little bit more specific because I have their history, I have their labs, I have all of that stuff, and so we can kind of just jump into wherever we need to. But for those of you who are trying to figure it out at home, we always start with a whole foods diet, then that can progress to a more paleo style diet, and eventually, if we need to, we can use an autoimmune paleo style diet. And I've described those in other videos before. I'll link those in the cards above. But essentially, a whole foods diet is avoiding foods that come in a box or a bag, things that are pre-packaged. A paleo diet is then going to remove things like grains and dairy. And an autoimmune paleo diet is going to go one step further, and it's going to remove the foods that are less likely to cause problems, but for some people who are dealing with chronic issues, still could be a problem for them. So in addition to grains and dairy, people will be removing things like legumes, nuts and seeds, nightshade vegetables, which includes your tomato, bell peppers, eggplant, white potato, spicy peppers, that sort of stuff, and also eggs. Again, not saying that these foods are problematic for everyone, but if we're continuing to have gut issues, if we're continuing to have constipation, then there is the strong suggestion that we should at least assess these areas and determine how each one of these foods fits with us. Next on our list of foods that fit is fiber. And this is one that I always want to make sure we bring up because for so long, people have kind of put fiber up on this pedestal that it is the cure-all, especially when it comes to constipation. If you look up recommendations right now on Google, it'll tell you to increase your fiber intake. And while that may be true for some people, we need to be aware that everyone is on a little bit of a spectrum with their fiber intake. So some people are going to do better with more fiber, and some people are going to do better with less fiber. We all have a little bit of a different physiological response to it. We all have a little bit different of a microbiome response, which we'll talk more about here in a little bit. And pending that, we may feel better or feel worse with fiber. And for some people, fiber can get them moving. And I've had plenty of patients and talked to plenty of people online where they're like, if I make sure to get some apples in or some pears in or some prunes in, whatever it might be, that really helps to keep me regular. That's awesome. That can be a great strategy to use. But if you're someone who has tried to really increase your fiber and you haven't seen improvements, well, that's a clear sign that we should probably do something different, and you may want to reduce your fiber down. And once we do that, we can kind of look at a number of different foods and say, do we want to be using things like fruits, as I just mentioned, or do we want to be going more in the direction of some leafy greens? There's going to be a bit of variability from food to food, and so we can leverage those in a way that works best for our own body. So fiber is great unless you don't react to it, and then we want to probably change things up, which I think is a fair way to approach it. Lastly, in this section, I wanted to make sure that we touched on fat and protein. So for a lot of people with hypothyroidism, people are trying to lose weight, and the common narrative around weight loss has always been to cut our calories, and the best way to do that usually is by cutting our fat intake. Fat per gram has more calories than carbohydrates and protein, and so again, it kind of makes sense from a math point. If we want to reduce our calories, fat is the best way to do that. However, as you guys know, if you've been watching my stuff, I'm a big proponent of people including healthy fats, and beyond the metabolic aspect of things and the way it can help to fuel our brain, fat is really important as a lubricant for our gut. And if you're someone who doesn't usually have fatty meals and then suddenly you have a brisket or like a fatty pork shoulder, you'll know that when you're spending a little bit more time in the bathroom, that it can be the fat that helps to speed up our digestion and contribute to some of those minor emergencies. So if you have been avoiding fat, it's something that you should look to reincorporate into your diet, especially if you're dealing with constipation. Yes, we don't want to overeat fat. We don't want to consume a bunch of unhealthy fats, some of the vegetable oils or processed oils. Those can be problematic for other reasons. But if you're getting some, olive oil, avocado oil, ghee, butter, if you tolerate it, or as I said before, some of those healthy fats that are intact with their whole animal parts, then that can be a great way to do it. Now, when it comes to protein intake, there's a few things that we need to consider. The first is that, as we just said, many people with hypothyroidism are trying to lose weight and therefore they are reducing their fat intake. But if they're also increasing their protein intake at the same time, which I think can be a great goal, many times they're choosing lean proteins. And I think this is where people get into trouble, and you'll hear things like, protein doesn't make me feel good. I feel like it's sitting in my stomach. It's causing me to bind up. And I think one of the big issues is that we're not eating protein with the fat. Fat, as we said, acts as a little bit of that digestive lubricant. And so sometimes by just adding the fat back in, we can get a more favorable response in terms of our digestion. The second thing that we need to look at, and this is kind of where I get concerned about getting too far off track, is our electrolyte intake. Now, protein, when we are using it as more of our primary nutrient, can cause a reduction in insulin levels. We've talked about this before, but that can be a great thing. Insulin is the hormone that helps us to store calories away, and while we certainly need some of it, we don't want increased or high circulating levels of insulin all the time, as that can cause a number of problems. However, when we drop our insulin levels down by adopting a more whole foods, healthy, protein-based diet, what can happen is we also see a reduction in our electrolytes. We tend to lose sodium through our urine because insulin is a hormone that also helps to regulate sodium and electrolyte balance. So with sodium, we typically see decreases in potassium and also magnesium, and that can change some of the dynamics in our gut where we don't have as much fluid maintained in our bowels, which can also contribute to dry, hard, difficult to pass stools. So if you are adopting more of a low carb or ketogenic diet, it may be wise for you to increase your sodium intake and potentially your magnesium intake. Magnesium is a great way to kind of get things moving, especially if we're in a pinch. I like people to start with about 200 milligrams and then increase from there as needed. We don't want to go too hard, too fast with electrolytes because that can cause emergency scenarios as well. So 200 milligrams to start with magnesium. I don't think there's a huge difference from the different forms of magnesium. I like to use magnesium bisglycinate, but that doesn't mean it's the best one. And then in terms of sodium, I think a good place to start is around 1,000 milligrams, and again, increasing from there as needed. So when it comes to foods that will fit with your body and help you to improve your constipation, make sure you're avoiding foods that are inflammatory and cause irritation. Gluten and dairy can be big ones, but there may be others. Look at your fiber intake and see if you need to increase fiber or decrease fiber. Both can have benefits for different people. And then lastly, adjust your fat, protein, and electrolyte levels to help have a more normal balance with some of those macronutrients. The second area that we need to focus on to help with our constipation is our microbiome. So our microbiome is all the bacteria, viruses, yeast, fungi, etc. that live in our GI tract and are a key part of helping us to break down food, extract nutrients, produce energy, and make sure that our gut is moving along at the proper speed. Now, when we have low thyroid function, it can change the distribution of those organisms in our gut, and this can lead to some unfavorable responses. So for some people, this could cause a proliferation of bacteria that could produce gas that would increase our bowel movements and lead to diarrhea. And for others, it can cause the opposite. It can cause an increase in gas that contributes more to constipation. But whether you're dealing with diarrhea or constipation, if you also have symptoms like bloating that occurs after 60 minutes of eating, or if you have a history of long-term antibiotic use, you need to be aware that it's possible some of the problem could be coming from your microbiome. So to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to support this area and get it healthy for you, there's a couple things that we can do. One, of course, is making sure that our nutrition is on point. And we just talked about some of the ways that you can modify that. The second is through the use of digestive enzymes. This is something that I use with a lot of my patients because it's very safe. it can be very effective. And if it's not effective, it's something that's very easy for us to trial and see if it does make a difference for you. I like ones that include betaine HCl, pancreatic enzymes, and ox bile or lipase. That way we have support for our stomach acid production and our gallbladder and our pancreas. But depending on who you are and how you respond to these things, sometimes having the acid in there can cause burning and discomfort. Sometimes the ox bile can cause us to need to run to the bathroom. That is a digestive stimulant. So we need to kind of pick and choose, and we do that by looking at the labels, what works best for us, and then finding the combination that will give us the most bang for our buck. So digestive enzymes are really critical at breaking down our food because our microbiome is used to getting the little tiny component parts of our food that we digest. We shouldn't be having these huge proteins, these huge fibrous portions of food that are coming down there because that can cause, again, those changes in the distribution of the bugs that live there. The other thing that I will use a lot of is probiotics. Now, there's a couple key things that you need to know here. If you have read before that you should take a particular strain of probiotics for a particular symptom, there's sometimes some validity to that, but I would really steer clear of that sort of one-to-one mindset. Our gut is like an ecosystem, and it's very hard for us to try to put a single organism into that ecosystem and think that it's going to work. It's kind of like if you were to remove like a predator from an ecosystem and suddenly you have all these rabbits running around because there's no natural predator to keep those rabbit numbers down. We cannot predict with our gut what sort of bacteria will allow the whole thing to kind of start working together and give us better function and give us better results. So do not take a single strain because you were told it's good for constipation, good for diarrhea, etc. On that same vein of thought, do not go get stool testing, look for the bacteria that you are low in, and then try to replace that bacteria with a probiotic. Again, same thing. We cannot look at those tests and just assume that a deficiency in one bacteria is because we're not getting it from our diet or from our environment. It has to come from supporting the entire system together, and that will allow your natural cultures to grow and thrive in a way that is helpful to you. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing because so many people are out there saying, take this probiotic for this, take this probiotic when you're low in these areas. Not the case. Probiotics work by modulating the whole environment, not by replacing a particular strain. So if we're not using probiotics in a replacement strategy, how are we using them? Well, I always group probiotics into three main categories, which includes our first category, which is Lactobacillus bifidobacterium blends. Those are the most common kind that you will pull off the shelf at any store. The second category is our Saccharomyces boulardii, and our last category is our bacillus or soil-based or spore-based types of probiotics. And what you want to do is trial each one of these to see what fits you best, just like with our food. And if we have a little bit of bloating, a little bit of discomfort in the beginning, that is totally normal whenever starting a new probiotic, but that should dissipate after about 2 or 3 days. If the bloating or discomfort continues or starts to get worse, then that probiotic is likely not a good fit for you. Once you've trialed each one of the probiotics, then you can use them in combination. If all three work, great. Or just pick and choose. That was a long or just pick and choose the ones that fit you. So if it's category 1 and category 3, great. If it's category 2 and category 3, totally fine. All we want is to be using a probiotic that has an effect on the environment, as we said, and once we know that it fits with our particular environment, we should be able to see some good results with that. And so probiotics can have an antimicrobial effect. They can create a space for your own gut microbiome to thrive. So once you start taking them, you just start to see reductions in gas, reductions in some of that digestive discomfort, and also improvements in your bowel movements. So our third and final area that we want to focus on today is changes in our enteric nervous system function. And our enteric nervous system is the group of neurons that innervates and activates our gut. And it can either do that to stimulate the release of digestive enzymes or to promote healthy motility and movement of food through our GI tract. Now, we can have two problems here. One is changes in the function of the enteric nervous system. So everything is still intact, but the way that it works isn't appropriate. Or we can have changes in the structure of the enteric nervous system, which means there's actual damage to the nerves that are involved and live in this part of the body. Now, when we have thyroid issues, we can often see changes in the function of the enteric nervous system. And the reason for that is because the enteric nervous system is very much tied into parasympathetic activity. So if you don't know, our parasympathetic nervous system is involved in more of what we call the rest and digest phase of our nervous system. So our autonomic nervous system has the parasympathetic side and the sympathetic side. The parasympathetic side is all about, didn't say, hard to say so many times, but our parasympathetic side is all about healing, growing, absorption of food and nutrients, and also reproduction. And on the flip side, our sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight, get out of danger, keep us safe in the short term. And we're going to see a back and forth from these two systems depending on what our body needs at the time. Do we need to digest a meal? Parasympathetic. Do we need to run away from a bear? Sympathetic. Hopefully that makes sense. But because our parasympathetic is so reliant on good brain function, when we have changes in our thyroid system, we don't always get proper activation of our brain like we would like. And so people can notice symptoms, and they're very common. Things like memory problems, brain fog, difficulty with memory, all of these can be tied to poor thyroid output. So if we're not having proper thyroid output, we're not having proper brain engagement, and therefore we don't engage that parasympathetic activity like we would like. When that happens, we don't then activate our enteric nervous system, and that can decrease our ability to have proper activation of our gut and digest things properly. On the flip side of that, there's a number of conditions that can cause physical or structural damage to our enteric nervous system. And that can include things like diabetes, inflammatory bowel conditions, cancer, chronic antibiotic use, or chronic use of steroids. And just for example, when it comes to diabetes, we all know that that can lead to things like diabetic peripheral neuropathy, which means that due to the chronically increased glucose and insulin levels, we have damage to the nerves in our hands and feet, which can give us burning, tingling, and loss of sensation. So if we can damage those nerves in our hands and feet, we can also damage the nerves that go to our gut, and we can lose function in those areas as well. Since those nerves are there to stimulate motility and improve movement in our gut, we can start to have problems with that particular task. Now, these things can be very tricky, and once you lose those neurons, the only options you have is to either hope that they regrow and reinnervate those muscles, or that there's still some left over that you can exercise and work to try to improve their function and compensate for the nerves that have been damaged. So to help out in these areas, I like to take a tandem approach that will support both good brain function and also activity of the nerves that are local in our gut. The number one way that I do this is making sure that people are exercising, specifically walking and getting your steps in. If you're someone who's dealing with constipation and you're getting up in the morning, hopping in the car, going to work, sitting all day, going home, dinner, watching some TV, and then going to sleep, you are likely getting in way fewer steps than you need to appropriately stimulate your digestive tract. Movement helps to stimulate the brain, and that will directly activate our digestion. And this is why people like to walk after having a big meal or a big dinner, because it helps to kind of get things moving, right? The next thing that I like to have people do is gargle. Now, I know that might sound a little bit weird, but the muscles in the back of our throat, the palate, is one of the first initiating points in the whole digestive cascade. So when we have to swallow, when we have food moving through that area, it sends signals to the brain and the rest of the digestive tract that food is on the way. And that causes us to have to prepare and get things moving down the line. So when it comes to gargling, what I will have people do is you take water and you do a vigorous gargle, and you time how long you can do that. Whatever time you get to before you start to kind of spit and choke a little bit, you want to remove 5 seconds. That's the amount that you want to exercise at. So if you can gargle for 30 seconds and you get a little choked up, 25 seconds is going to be your exercising level. You are then going to do 25 seconds of gargling 3 times when you brush your teeth in the morning and when you brush your teeth at night. And you want to do this gargling vigorously. So not just a light little gargle. You want to be loud and proud, as I will often tell my patients, and make sure that you're really engaging those muscles in the back of the palate. Otherwise, you're not going to get that proper brain stimulation like we want. Now, this isn't going to change things for you right away. Just like going to the gym one time is not going to give you six-pack abs. We all wish, but that's not the case. We have to work it for a little while, and as we stimulate and re-engage those parts of our brain and also the parts that feed down into our enteric nervous system, we should be able to see much better outcomes in the regularity of our bowel movements. On top of the exercises that you're doing, if you have any of the underlying conditions that I just mentioned that could be contributing to enteric nervous system dysfunction, make sure you're working with your doctor to get that addressed. Walking and gargling is great, but it really doesn't matter how much of that you're doing if you don't address the root cause of the problem. If those issues are still there causing irritation and damage, it will prevent you from having the success and seeing the results that you want to see. But that is it for the topics that we want to focus on today. Remember, if you want to improve your thyroid and your gut function so you have less constipation, you want to be making sure that you have foods that fit with your body. You want to support your microbiome through a healthy diet and also use of digestive enzymes and probiotics. And you also want to stimulate your nervous system and make sure that you don't have any damage or irritation to the enteric nervous system, which helps to facilitate good motility in your gut. But as I said at the beginning of the video, today was a trial in a new format. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, let me know in the comments below. And if you didn't, let me know in the comments below. I'm more than happy to continue to adjust things and make it more applicable for you guys. That way you can have the best outcomes with your health. Also, if you have any questions, you can leave them for me in the comments. And if there's something that I missed today that you have used in the past to help you out with your constipation, I'd love it if you can share that as well. If you want to work with me one-on-one, the address that you need to get in touch with is in the description box below. It's contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com. I always offer a free consult to those people who are interested in working with me. That way we can make sure that everything is a good fit and that our goals align. If you want something that you can start working on at home, we talked a little bit about electrolytes today and how they can be a big part of making sure that your bowel movements are regular. My free download is Electrolytes for Hashimoto's and Keto, and I go over which electrolytes you should be including, how much of them you should be including, and how often you should be taking them. So you can go ahead and grab that, and that should be a big help to you as well. But as you guys know, I'm here for you. I'm happy to help you out with anything you need. If you haven't done so already, check out last week's video if you want to learn about how gluten can impact our thyroid function. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, share it with a friend, and come say hi on social media. Links are all down below. But my name is Dr. Bodle. I think you guys are incredible. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you next Thursday.